Okay.
Okay.
So, let me see. Um, so tonight I'm going to try to divide the class into three parts. Um, the first part is I'm going to introduce some of Lopez's work, uh, just briefly as an introduction. Then I'm going to show you pictures of his work. And then if you if you wrote for me some response to his film, I'd love to hear that. Okay? If you did that, or if you just want to be improvising, that I'd like to hear what you thought. I asked you to write between 6 and 12 lines. Okay. Um, Next week, I want to continue with this um, artist, and I have a theme that I hope you'll find interesting, which is connected with paintings, landscapes of Madrid, okay,
Mm.
which I've never seen as an exhibit, but I think would make a great exhibit of his work. Paintings and drawings of Madrid. Um, so in 2 weeks from today, 2 weeks from today, I want you to select two images of Lopez and write comparing the two images, 15 to 25 lines. And you're going to be getting um, all the images from the class, um, one class at a time. So at some point um, tomorrow or Friday, hey, that's Dean, right? At the bottom? Dean? Oh, well, maybe he's stepped out. But anyway, Dean is helping me with that. So I'm going
Mm.
to send you all those images. So you'll have them to keep, and you can select two of those images or two images that are not there that you would like that connect with Lopez as a theme. And you're going to write for 2 weeks from today, 15 to 25 lines. And when you compare them, you're going to think about composition, drawing, line, mystery, poetry, light, expression, emotion, um, light and dark, psychology, you name it. Go past what I'm saying. Um, so uh, last week we started with an image uh, about two-thirds the way through of a woman sleeping, which is a painted sculpture. So it's polychrome sculpture. And I think I just realized that I forgot to mention in the talk last time that there is a tradition in Spain of polychrome sculpture. And so Lopez comes out of that tradition, and the tradition is more religious than than his work is, but it's a tradition of painted sculptural figures that is particularly Spanish. So he's taken that tradition and transmorphed it into something else. And okay, so I'm going to just sort of speak in an improvisatory way about some extra thoughts that I have about his work. So when I saw that image of the uh, woman sleeping, I was very drawn to it, and then went to this gallery and saw that sculpture in person. So here's a few rambling, non sequitur thoughts about his work. So what was I? taken with was the mystery in his work. Um, the way his work, although is figurative, is influenced by modern art, by
Mhm,
modernist art.
mhm,
I like also the lack of certitude in his work. In other words, he's not telling you what you should think or believe. He's asking you to fill in blanks. He's not providing an agenda, which is either political, moral, ethical, or whatever. He's asking you to fill it in, to respond. The work that he does has an overlap in many different areas. And for instance, abstract expressionism, collage, um, it has an interest in time, the passing of time, an interest in psychology, surrealism, and light. So the light in his work is quite refracted. Um, Recently, when I had the good fortune of traveling to Holland to see the exhibit of his work, I was looking at the light very carefully, and it seemed to me that some of the light resembled Cézanne. In other words, it was very close values, one near another, and kind of sparkling or glittering. Um, But from a distance, it doesn't look like that. From a distance, it all settles out. But up close, it just looks like spots of paint. Um, so the light is hard to describe, really. I had difficulty figuring out the language to use to say what that light is. I think that the light is melancholy
mhm.
or um, distanced, um, close shards of color. And the palette for that light is very limited, very close in value. Though that area and some of the rest of the paintings reminded me a bit of Andrew Wyeth and also made me think a little bit of Edwin Dickinson. Um, it seems to me that he's not a philosopher, he's not writing philosophy, not at all. But there's something in the nature of what he's painting which seems existential to me. Um, there's also something that is religious, but is not religious. Okay, religious, but not religious. He spends a great deal of time on one painting. The painting almost becomes an object of meditation. Some of the paintings have dates like 15 years or 20 years, start to finish. This is totally unbelievable. 15 years, 20 years, 5 years, 12 years. Now, the thing that's really weird here is that even though it has this religious side and it takes a good deal of time, it also has an underpinning that is experimental. And that those things don't seem to me to go together. Experimental feels like of this moment, like smash, boom, okay? And time going very slowly feels quite different. Okay. Um, so you could almost say that perhaps what he's doing is a meditation on reality. Somewhere recently, maybe it was connected with the exhibit that I saw or one of the two other videos that I suggested. He describes the measurement that he does, and he uses some device to find the perspective. Okay, you'll see him in the film holding his arm out and he's looking at something. I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that is. Maybe someone has an idea, but I don't. Um, but the thing that he says about this is very interesting. He says that he has to measure this because reality is too much for him. It's too diverse. It's too expansive. It's too disruptive. And by measuring it, he slows it down and gets himself to grasp it. I thought that was really interesting. Um, eh, Someone in an interchange with me on Facebook said um, that Lopez's work is informed by a knowledge of distant and recent painting. Distant and recent painting. That's a really interesting statement. So, in other words, you can see an older exploration of art and a newer exploration of art fighting it out in one painting. I think that's fascinating. Um, and lastly, before I show you the images, um, a tremendous interest in dreams and dream imagery. Um, I don't know where this comes from. I mean, I said this in the last class. He comes from a farming family, farming community and family. Um, these these ideas that he's exploring, um, maybe I'm mistaken, but they don't seem to me to be connected with agriculture, farming, or that world. They seem to me, I hope I'm not being stereotypical, but they seem to me to be connected with contemporary philosophical ideas, perhaps existential ideas, and a certain kind of modernism of thinking. This is fascinating. He comes to Madrid to study at the age of 13. Okay. He's much younger than the other students. The man in the film is a good deal older than him. And one of the things that when they have this conversation, the other man is quite jolly. Lopez just keeps working. The other guy keeps talking. Lopez keeps working. And Lopez, at one point, I hope I have this right, Lopez reminds him that he couldn't go to the bars with these people because he was that many years younger. He was like 13, they were 17, 18. Um, okay, it occurs to me maybe Alan, did you understand what he was doing with the measurement?
Well, in the I guess in the third film, he actually shows he's holding like a rod, and he's holding a compass, the kind of compass that you, and he would move this along, and he would measure whatever he was looking at with that.
Yes, yes. That's what I thought. But he does this all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He does this all. Oh, and this reminds me, I should mention this point, which is that I've read a lot about him and all kinds of interesting or boring details. But in art school, I believe that he won 9 awards connected with architecture and the study of architecture. So you'll see more of that. Well, you'll see that in his work, period, but you'll see more of that next week when I explore this theme of Madrid. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can do this with the share screen. Okay, okay. Now we were fooling around with this before the class started, and Renee said that on your screen, if the if the image is too small, if you click the green button on the top, your image will get bigger. So just a word about that. So um, this is the image that we started with. I just wanted to put this on to refresh you. And I thought I would start with some images which were older than this one, or done around the same time, and then proceed to more work that was done after this. So this one this one was in the exhibit that I just saw Am- in um, in Holland, and so the theme. One thing that occurs to me about this is the idea of multiple realities in one reality, or almost a collage reality, introduction of a collaged reality. In these slides, what is missing is the texture and weight of the paint. So things sort of flatten out in the slides. And even if you are used to looking at slides, you almost have to imagine it being more painterly thicker. Um, I think this image was probably done at the same time as the woman sleeping, or maybe slightly earlier. Um, you can see how close the values are, like in his jacket, or from his jacket to the wall, the shadow on the wall, um, what looks like wood on a door, very close values. And you could almost feel the texture in his hands and in his jacket. So this was in the first exhibit that I saw of his work, and I don't know. To me, this is something simply stunning. This is almost like the painterly equivalent of a short story, or a spooky short story, or a highly touched short story. Very, very close values. Something that is almost naturalistic, but is really impossible to be naturalistic. This is this is like an image out of a dream.
The woman on the left is almost, it's like a ghost.
Yes, the woman on the left, I think, is his wife, but I'm not sure. But that's what I think. I
But
don't.
she's
I'm
she's not complete.
no,
Right.
no. She's just floating. She's floating there. But the image of the 3 other people in the door is very spooky, and the man in on the far left is almost invisible. Um,
Right.
um, this reminds me of something I forgot to say, that the 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 argument in Lopez for the possibility of much greater subject matter in the figurative artist's world is a very strong argument. And when I saw his work, I realized that the subject matter in reality is much greater, much, much greater. And it's not based on subjects which were in the book of art subjects or high art subjects.
He really liked bacon, didn't he?
I
Yeah,
I could see
does that.
I could see that, but I don't know. I really I
Oh,
would.
he
He
did. There was
says it.
the
Yeah,
interview.
He says that. He
he
says,
says it in one of his,
"Oh, okay, that's great. I'm glad you said that." Uh,
Simon, is
yeah,
it hard to draw a mirror like that? That mirror is really striking.
yeah.
the mirror is really striking, really striking. I agree with you.
Well, it's hard to imagine in that setting what the light source is for the wall reflected on the left of the mirror.
Well said. Terrifically well said. Yeah, very well said. Eh, Um, anyone else want to say something? Please.
I think that the mirror shows a little light bulb on top. That might be the source of light.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
I think
A
you're right.
little light bulb.
I think you're right.
What size is this painting, Simon? Do you know?
I'm gonna estimate, so I'm gonna say 28 by 38,
Hmm.
25 by 40, something
Yeah.
not too big, but not small.
Yeah. Well, if you look at that light bulb, the immediate surrounding to the light bulb is a very warm tone, and the immediate reflection of that light bulb on the walls on either side of it are very warm, but the light on the wall on the left in the mirror is a very cool light.
Well said.
So I
think
wonder
they're
whether
about
that
what
light bulb is the source.
All right, I should, there's a variety of people in the class, but I want to just translate some of this for everyone. Chuck is talking about warm and cool. So usually warm is orange, certain
Early.
certain kind of red, yellowy, in that direction, and cool meaning violety, blue, blue gray, blue green gray is cool. Okay. Um, let me go on a little bit. Um,
Seen that one.
okay, so this one was on display in Holland. I'm pretty sure that this is his wife. Um, the light in this painting is dazzling.
Mm,
It's like if you look at it up close, it's all exploding. It's not still. It's all shimmering. And this is a nice size painting. This is bigger than the one we were just looking at. I'm going to guess this is about 5 feet wide or
mm,
slightly more than 5 feet, but in that area. But the light is very luminous and hard to put into words. Like you'll see on the side of the tub, the reflections.
mm.
And you can imagine his wife posing there for days, days,
years?
Wrinkled and
years, wrinkled. It probably had a deep effect on her physical.
She
Uh,
was very pruny at the end of the day.
uh, well, you could also say she was very pretty at the beginning of the day.
She's an artist too, right? Isn't she?
She's an
Mm.
artist too, and yes, and she's in the film. She's in the film.
yeah,
She's painting at the end of the film on
right.
him. On him. You should see that part if you haven't. Um, okay, so this is another painting of Lopez.
Love this.
So again, when you see this in person, um,
The light.
I think the bottom might be truncated on this. Yeah, it is. Not sure how you make this smaller. Well, let me just try something. Oh yeah, that's the
Oh,
bottom.
okay.
You're entering this room, uh, and the light and the glow of this is amazing. He does a painting of that sink. I believe it's that sink. I can't remember if I put that in here. And I think a painting of this toilet bowl.
It looks like it's next on your list.
Say it again.
It looks like it's the next painting. I can see,
Yes, yes, it is. It is. This painting is 8 feet high.
oh, wow.
It's a big painting. And there's a drawing of the same scene that is very striking. So another point that I would make here is that there are very few artists that combine drawing, painting, and sculpture. And this was a Renaissance idea. And after the Renaissance, very few artists did this. Degas actually would be an example, even though it's not as well known as it could be, but he did a great many sculptures, especially of scenes of dancers and nudes. So he's very adept at drawing and painting and sculpture, as you can see. Um, Very close values. So what do I mean by very close values? If you had a chart of values and you had 9 of them, um, from the lightest light to the darkest dark, when you say the values are very close, they are in the range of 4, 5, and 6, or 5 and 6, or 5, 5 and a quarter, and 5 and a half. That's close. So if they were in the range of 1 to 9, that would be the values are high contrast as opposed to close values. So that's what that expression means. This drawing, let me see if I make this a little smaller. This drawing is very interesting. So he uses a lot of experimental ideas in his work. And I think that this drawing must have been splashed with some kind of shellac or paint or something, because it appears very yellowed out and very atmospheric in the yellow direction. Sorry for this reproduction, but it's really quite beautiful. This is a better reproduced drawing. This one here.
Did you skip one?
Oh yes, yes. Good, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Who said that? Who said that? Oh, good, Kathleen. So this is the painting of um, the toilet and all the other accoutrements in that bathtub. So getting back to what I said in a simple-minded way, uh, he has expanded the subject matter, at least for me, or I think for many people, of what is possible in a work of art. And that was a big moment for me because um, it's a very fresh idea, very interesting idea. And I guess the observation one could make to oneself is that it's not the subject matter, it's not the subject or the subject matter that counts, it's what you bring to it. And in his case, he's taking everyday objects and transforming them into something else. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, in this painting, this is very hard to see, but in this painting, there is a window. And I've seen this painting a number of times in different places. And the window there's a certain kind of window that almost looks like the kind of plastic that's used for packing. Like it has little bubbles. It's a very cheap window, but it has little bubbles. And this window must have taken so long to paint. Every little bubble is painted in this window. And it is simply incredible because as much as time as he spent in painting every little bubble, it evaporates when you look at it up close. It just looks like paint. Or the only other theory that I had about this was he had one of these pieces of glass or plastic or whatever, and he coated the whole thing with paint. And then he took it and he placed it on the canvas. And he got all of the pebbles to be exact, and then he painted over it.
Sam, is his medium in all of these paintings, in this painting and the other paintings, always oil?
They're always oil, and they're always on wood,
Hmm.
on canvas, on wood. Maybe there might be an exception, but it's generally on wood. I think the reason it's on wood is that he can manipulate the surface on wood, whereas on canvas, the threads of the canvas and the grain of the canvas is tantamount. It pushes in front of everything.
Although, aren't there some scenes in some of the one or more of the films that you gave us links to in which he's preparing canvases?
Yes, yes, it could be. So it could be 10% to 90%, but I think most of them are on wood panel. Okay, so
I just, this
Yeah.
painting, I find it hard to figure out what's going on. What's that middle line? It almost looks like it's two separate paintings.
yes, it almost looks like sort of a painting cut in half.
Yeah.
But in person it really works. And
Oh,
there,
okay.
there's a painting that I realized that I should have included, which is of a sink. And same thing occurs in that sink. It's like one perspective is looking straight out and the other perspective is looking down.
Okay.
The difference is that part in the middle that you mentioned. Um, I I wonder if anyone has a question or a thought that I don't see on this screen. Like, Kim, are you here now? Do you have a question?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I am. I'm here. I'm following very
You-
carefully. I don't have a question yet. I was just kind
Okay.
of, I was thinking in the film about that one scene after it starts torrentially raining. And
Yes.
then he and his wife are preparing a piece of wood and
Yes.
putting something on top, and then they lay tiles down. And I was wondering if that was something that he prepared for to paint on. Because I was
Oh, you mean at the beginning? At the beginning of the film? They
uh,
put they put
no. No, it's after he works on the painting for a while, that one season, and then it starts raining.
yes.
And he becomes frustrated, and you can see where he's moved the painting inside, but then they're preparing something on the floor. I don't know. Does anyone else remember that scene?
Yes, it looks like they're preparing a kind of gesso ground for the drawing of the quince tree.
It looked like they put gesso on
Yeah.
Like it was board, then with paper, then gesso. It was really complicated.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Well, the irony in the film is that the painting is a failure. The painting doesn't work, doesn't succeed. It's all about process. The whole film is about process, and the issue of process, which I didn't go into in my introduction. I'm sometimes somewhat unorganized or disorganized, but to catch up to that, a lot of his work is about process. You could see the way things are left there and just left. Um, Let me see. Trying to think of people that haven't participated.
Simon, I have a question
Oh
or
yeah.
a comment
Oh, go
on
ahead, Jason.
the prior painting, which is the perspective of a long distance, so to speak, of the bathroom,
Yeah.
and this. But one thing that jumps out to me about the other one, if we weren't discussing this now, and I saw this painting with no description, I would not think it was a painting. It looks like a photograph, a black and white photograph of an old historic home that somebody's trying to capture in its basic glory. So there's a certain photographic quality to it. I don't know, and wasn't able to watch the videos, but as to whether or not photography was something he toyed with or was interested in. But to me, that photographic quality stands out even more so than the prior paintings. There's something that's so real about it that you can almost touch it.
I don't, well, I think I could understand why you're saying this, and I think it does make sense in a certain way, but I don't think a photographer could do a photograph like this. That's my opinion. I, I mean, you may think it looks photographic, but I don't think even a very good photographer couldn't do this, because um, it's more selective. Maybe you'd have to do a photograph and manipulate it, but that's my instinct that it couldn't be done. But I don't know. Maybe I'm not right. But
Can I just say something real quick,
yeah,
Simon?
yeah.
This painting brings out the time factor you mentioned because of the white tiles on the floor, on the walls, surrounding the window. But then you see all the grime that's built up over time and the rust, and under the window there's a stain where it seems like water from the elements has penetrated through and
Well
going
said.
on down. So it just gives you a feeling, the historical feeling that was mentioned before, but also the time lapse. It's a story unto itself.
Yes, yes, that's excellent. It's a narrative.
Right.
The narrative is not clear. It's not. It's not like Marxism is a very clear narrative. Fascism is a very clear narrative. Um, Capitalism, in a certain way, is quite clear. Um, this is not clear. This is not clear to me. Now, again, anything I say, it may not be right, and I may say that in a year from now something that contradicts what I'm saying. But I like the idea that this is a narrative, but I don't quite know what the story is. uh, it's sort of funny, here's a narrative, but what is the short story or the novella or the novel? What accompanies this? Um, Ron, you wanted to say something? No, no. Matthew, what about you? Matthew?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Uh,
Oops.
any thoughts? Question, thoughts?
No questions really. I'm finding this fascinating.
Okay, let me keep going.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
From what I read about Antonio, I think that when he sees an image like this, it excites him and he may feel there's a narrative, but he is so detail oriented. I think almost his goal is to get the details excruciatingly correct. And I think he gets lost in the beauty of the details. And I think that we may be going down the wrong road if we look too much at the narrative. I think the details are an end in itself for him.
I think what you're saying is so interesting, and it made me think of something which I didn't think of before, and so that's why conversation is good. Um, in a work like this, you could almost say it's cool and hot at the same time. It's cool, it's detached, observational, intricate, detailed, and it's hot in that it's trying to get at an emotion or a congealing feeling, uh, something, a heart stopping, pumping, something. Um, let me continue with this one. So this I'll make a little bigger if I could. So this is one of the first drawings I've seen of Lopez, and this drawing is about 5 feet wide. And I think it's constructed with powdered graphite and alcohol
Huh.
in multiple layers, but it's only an instinct. I don't have a real understanding of what he's doing. But the theme of light, it connects with his paintings, and the light is a very high charged, surreal light.
You've seen this in person, Simon?
Yes, yes, it's very striking, and
Beautiful.
very enigmatic. It's like there, but not there.
Yeah.
And actually the idea of emotions or visual states which are the opposite and are together is a very interesting idea. A poem that has two vectors in it, one going to the left and one going to the right, is quite fascinating. A chapter in a book in which you sense an irony going on between one direction and another is, from my point of view, a really extraordinary piece of writing.
I was looking at the clouds just, peripherally. And then when I focused, I realized it's a little village or something, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes, yes. Well said. Well said. The next one is very interesting. This drawing here. Very, very interesting, striking drawing. So this is done with again with, I believe, powdered graphite and stains of alcohol or watercolor, I'm not sure, or gouache. The scene shows a man walking, and I believe this man is Lopez's uncle.
Oh.
In this farming community, the uncle, who I don't know how he was related, be interesting to know. The uncle is an artist. The uncle is a painter, and the uncle leaves Lopez to do his early work by himself.
Mhm.
certain point when Lopez is quite young, like 10, 11, 12, 13, the uncle steps in and suggests various things and kind of mentors him. And I think that this drawing strikes me as a kind of reverie of the uncle and the artist. And there's a cupboard on the right. And either this cupboard or another cupboard appears in a painting, which I do have. The floor and the tiles on the floor are almost look like a fish-eyed lens in a photograph. It is rotating to some degree. I'm only the different things that I've pointed out only hints at what is going on here with the idea that I could be wrong on any of those suggestions or more. So in a way, it follows the idea that this is a narrative, but what is going on is not clear. But it's clear enough that you want to know what it is. In other words, you are looking at this and you're thinking, what is going on? What do I want to see? What do I want to understand? His work is very hermetic. So the subject or the crux of it is inside somewhere, deep inside, or maybe even outside, as I said last week, on the far left or far right or above or below. Yeah, yeah.
The perspective is very strange because it's almost as if he's looking down. If you look at the size of that lamp versus his uncle.
Yes.
And then it looks maybe like there's some painting frames behind it.
Yes.
But
yes, yes. Yeah. This is a very interesting one. One of my favorites, this one.
Oh.
So the interest in abstraction and minimalism and non-objective art is fascinating. So in terms of the idea of, maybe a manic depressive would have this type of bipolarity, but it's fascinating in a work of art. So here's something that I think of when I see this. This looks like the beginning or end of a summer or a move to or from, not clear. And what took place in that room before everything was packed up? I can't help but think of
It's a surreal scene because the wall doesn't permit a bed of the size that you see the ends of to exist in that room.
I can't help but think of wanting to ask, is Kim here now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Kim, do you think that this has a kind of it's a stupid question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think
Well,
this?
I will give you a stupid answer. So go.
Okay, I want your answer to be smarter than my question.
Okay.
Do you think that this has a poetic overture to it? This image.
Well,
What?
I was thinking about, I think it has a truly psychological overture.
What did you
Yeah,
think? What did you
yeah,
think?
yeah. I mean, well, there's a lot of lineation.
What did you
It's
think, Marie?
an image of lines. So from a poetry point of view, kind of purely as craft, I would say yes. And it doesn't make sense. I mean, you really have to study it because look at where that door is, or is it a window?
A
And
door, a door,
and these are like half beds and
folded, folded up.
yeah, it's there's a lot of rebuttal in this. It makes me extremely uncomfortable.
Really, really. Re-
Mhm.
Why do
I
you?
mean, to me, Simon,
Wait a
I think the subject matter isn't the subject matter. I think the subject matter is secondary to the fact that this is an exercise in very strict single point perspective.
No, just hold that point. Kim, why you use the word rebuttal?
Well, I mean, I mean, when I look at it, I feel a lot of kind of dissonance going on. I mean, there's something that's striking about it. I love the idea I forget who just said
Chuck.
about, yeah, this perspective, which, oh, sorry, I just lost the Zoom here, which, it's that square in the middle, um, and then the light fixture is just barely off center.
Right.
I mean, I think that there's so much going on. You could probably talk about this painting for hours or days,
Very well said.
It
Let's-
feels claustrophobic to me.
That's interesting.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think of absence and presence. Let me go on to the next one. There's this one.
Sure.
Now, speaking of subject matter that you wouldn't think would be in a work of art, a work of fine arts, this is clearly an example of that. So this
Yeah.
must be the end of a meal,
Yeah.
or you've just finished your meal, or you're looking across the table at someone else's meal, and and it seems a funny uh, and yet sad moment. Can you make a work of art out of it? And clearly he has.
Are the ghostly images just a reflection of the photographer,
Um,
or are they part of the work?
you mean by the spoon?
Yeah, I see at least three pictures, and then it looks like, sorry, three figures, and then it looks like some pictures hanging on the opposite wall.
I don't think so. I'm going to guess that's in the picture.
Okay.
Um, there's a way of taking photographs of works of art under glass that is surprisingly good. Anyway, let's go on to this one.
Yeah.
This is Lopez's daughter, and I just think this is stunning.
Simon, do you think this is charcoal or again graphite with the alcohol? What me?
I really found it hard to firmly identify it, but I don't think it's charcoal.
Okay.
I think it's the some kind of graphite mixed with alcohol. It has both a dry and an aqueous quality, but I could not. I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and I couldn't tell you for sure what it was. But I know the paper has been um, tinted or smashed at or dusted up in some way.
That's what I was gonna ask, if it was a toned paper.
It's,
Okay.
it's toned, but
Well,
D something. The
it makes it look like a sepia photograph,
Yes.
so.
I just looked up sepia, a dark brown ink or pigment originally prepared from the secretion of the cuttlefish.
Huh.
well, yeah. I think this is far away from the cuttlefish. All right, let me keep going.
That's his wife.
So this, I believe, is his wife,
Yeah.
and this was in the exhibit that I saw just recently, and it is really stunning.
Yeah.
It has an older and a newer quality about it, and I find that very appealing. This drawing is very interesting. Same woman, small as a drawing, maybe 10 by 12, 12 inches by 10 inches, 12 high. I think the drawing is a little darker than this, but this was the best one that I could find of what was available. I think the drawing is a little darker and has a little more oomph to it. And that is his wife. And I think the drawing has a lot of palpability and energy connected with it.
Don't you think, Simon, with all of those squares, that it's probably a drawing that's preparatory to either a larger drawing or a painting?
Yes, we're very well said. Very well said. And I don't know what this is a study for. It could be a painting that's coming up. I'm not sure. But you're absolutely right. That's what those squares are about. So now, I believe that this
That's the.
is the chest that we saw in that drawing. This is a very large painting. This painting, I think, is about 8 feet high. And in the photograph that I have, the bottom of this painting all becomes muddy and gets closer and closer in value. The painting is about 2% more open. So it's not exactly bright, not at all, but the difference between the floor and the chest, or the chest and the wall, is the slightest bit more apparent. And the objects in the chest are quite fascinating. On a similar theme is this one.
Oh. Looks like she's floating behind it.
Yes, yes. This is also quite large. I'm not sure if it's the same size as the others, as the other one, but I'm gonna guess 80 or 84 inches high.
But it's also surreal in a sense, because what is she standing on?
Yeah.
She's floating.
Yeah.
Not standing on anything. She's
Floating.
To me,
she's just floating through the air.
to me, it feels like a torso, a sculpture, a polychrome torso.
Yes, yes.
To me, it feels like that's something she loves. That cabinet with all the crystal and the porcelain and the plates. That was her domain.
Huh.
Things she loved.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
It also looks like the candle is falling off the wall on the right.
Yes, yes. And you could see the passageway to the
Oh,
right.
right.
into the next room.
So the candle is floating too.
The candle is floating too.
It's not-
This is a very interesting painting, this one.
This,
This I've seen.
I have two details of this, but the painting is quite fascinating, and he's left the painting in this in-between state. And so it's both finished and unfinished at the same time. So here's a detail.
Mm.
Here's another detail.
Huh.
Now I'm going to go back to the first one. So a typical family scene, filtered through his mind and his psyche, is quite striking. One thing that's interesting about this painting is this area. You could see it here,
Mhm.
this area. The meat is a clipping out of a magazine, pasted down.
Really?
Yeah, really, really. Yeah. And I didn't see that. Someone, actually the fellow who went with me to Holland, at another time pointed that out to me, and he's exactly right.
Isn't there also something wrong with the woman's head?
Yeah.
Well, clearly there's something wrong. She seems to have two heads.
Exactly. That is it, yes.
that's it.
I think that what's interesting here is that he started with her head lower, then I think, I'm not sure, then he raised it, or he started with it higher and lower,
Lower.
but he was stuck in between and ended up kind of feeling, let's go with this.
Yeah.
All right, so just a few more.
Okay, great.
This is, I think, an amazing painting.
Oh my God.
And this I will include with the
Right.
next week, the images of Madrid. But um, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this, and that is very appealing. Um, and not only have I not seen anything like this, maybe I have a lack of imagination, but I've never even thought of something like this.
Oh,
When I imagine this, when I think of this, here's a detail,
hmm.
and I get back to this one. This is a detail. I get back to this. I imagine, now this is just a surmise, it's not correct, but it would make an interesting article or possibly poem, is that Lopez arrives at the age of 13 in Madrid and goes back home at the end of this semester. Then he's 14 and he is traveling back to Madrid from his hometown of Tamaloso. And on the outskirts of Madrid, there are um, um, overgrown areas uh, with grass and slightly dissolute quality. And in one of the areas that is somewhat dissolute, he sees something. And it's something that he wasn't expecting to see. And then a number of years pass, and then he takes his image that he sees, or his dream that he sees, and relocates it on a main street in Madrid. How does that sound?
Okay.
Rita, what do you think?
Sex in the City.
I think that he has always been very interested in both exteriors and interiors. And he might be just melding the two together. What's in each one of those windows? There are an awful lot of windows. There are an awful lot of stories behind those windows. And maybe he's showing us the interior and exterior at the same time.
Terrific, terrific. His whole grouping of scenes of windows, and I didn't have time to include all these, but this is one. This is an image which most of you have seen, which looks like the New York City subways. This is the image that I spoke about earlier of the sculpture. This is a standing figure. This is the head.
A self-portrait. You think it's a self-portrait?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, I wouldn't say that.
Huh.
Years ago, I wouldn't have said that. Who asked that?
Carol.
Oh, Carol. But in recent years, strangely enough, he's starting to look like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in recent years, he, as a young man, was very striking looking, and he still is striking looking. But in his latter years, he's starting to look like this man. This man, if you saw him in person, is well over 6 feet tall, and Lopez is probably about 5'4", 5'5". I mean, he's a small man. I don't think that matters, but
yeah.
So this is the sculpture that I was talking about before, and I said that I have an image of this. Oh, this is the sculpture that's at the Museum of Modern Art, and you have to request to see this. So it is thick, maybe 3 or 4 inches in depth, and painted wood, but sculptural and going in and out, deep and frontal. They're very complicated.
Really?
This painting, I think, was reworked. I don't quite understand it, but it was reworked, and I believe that that's his wife, and I think that that is Lopez, but discombobulating. And this is a detail of the woman.
It looks like that drawing that you had previously.
Yeah.
Which one? Oh, the one,
The drawing with all the line, this.
the one that was 12 by 10.
The one that had all the squares that we thought he was copying.
That's right. That's right. This is the last image that I had. This has gone a little longer than I thought, but this is the last one. So
Wow.
this was done for, I believe, for the Boston Museum, and was outside the museum for this exhibit that took place there, and I believe it is still outside the museum. and it's a sculpture of his grandchild.
Hmm.
Um,
What's it made of?
it's bronze. Bronze, either painted or with some kind of surface on, but it's bronze. Do you have any comments on what we've done so far? Anyone, or question?
I have a question. Not all of these images, but a lot of them look on screen like photographs. They're so realistic looking. When you see them as paintings, do they look the same way, or can you tell that they are paintings right away?
No, they're clearly paintings. This is not photorealistic.
Not photoreal.
No,
Yeah, they really look like it on the screen.
well, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that, but no, they're clearly paintings. They don't look like, they're not painted to look like photographs.
Mhm.
His work is very hard to be seen. So bringing all of this work to Holland, more than 100 pictures,
Wow.
sculptures, and drawings is quite an occasion. So many of them are in private collections, or some of them are in the collection of the Reina Sofia in Madrid, which is the Museum of Contemporary Art in Madrid.
I see.
Is there a reason that you haven't included some of those big cityscapes that he did of Madrid?
I want to do that next week. I want to do that as a theme by itself. I think what he's done with that is very interesting. And it occurred to me, if we were going to spend 2 days on this, that theme would be interesting to see by itself. Um, it- um, any other questions? I'd like a few of you to read what you put together in terms of the film. I hope that's okay. So we're going to go back to the screen, and so could I ask, well, would someone like to read to start with, or would you-
Simon, it's Len. I jotted down some notes on the documentary from his exhibit.
Okay,
There's just some comments, and I'll share those if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
All right, here are my thoughts on the documentary from the exhibit in Pedrera. There is an alpha and omega to the life force of a painting. The alpha is the creative act that brings it to life. The omega is the reaction aroused in the viewer. Without the act of creation and the viewer's reaction, a painting is inanimate, waiting in silence for the museum lights to come on tomorrow, or for the crate to open months or years from now. Seeing Antonio Lopez Garcia in the act of painting and how he and his curators prepare for his show, we are reminded that the magic of a painting is found in its creation and perception. In this documentary, we see Lopez Garcia's inspiration and a hint of his process. His use of a hand compass to measure angles and perspective erodes some of the mystery of his creative process. But as mystery ebbs, his technique fills the void. His art is not the fathomless act of a genius, but a combination of Homo sapiens inspiration and perspiration. we are forced to confront the reality that what we think of as genius is most often a combination of natural gifts and highly practiced skills. It's both fascinating and delightful to see Lopez Garcia discuss the positioning of his works in the exhibit with the curator. He transitions from creator to receiver of his own work. His appreciation is captured in an elegant observation. The most beautiful thing about the exhibitions is that you see all your things.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent.
Yes.
Really good. Kristen.
This is not well written, but I wrote to Simon, so I'll read what I have. One thing I noticed that I just want to start with was that there was a scene in the movie about the quince tree, and there was a quote I wrote down. There was a man looking at it and chatting with him, and he said, "No, what we have here is the perfect union between feelings and order, but it's always feeling and order. Reason and intuition go hand in hand." Simon often talks about slow looking at works of art as a way to take in and think carefully and deeply about the piece. Watching this film was in and of itself an exercise in slow looking. Each frame is so beautiful and felt so precisely considered. Obviously, the filmmaker worked very hard to create beautiful images throughout the entire film. The pacing was slow, quiet, and methodical. It seemed that the viewer is engaged in an exercise in viewing the film at a slow pace, slow looking. We observed Lopez Garcia as he observed the quince tree extraordinarily closely, worked slowly and carefully, more slow looking. The other individuals and the city were also part of the careful and slow work. The viewer was also engaged in watching the precision and the beauty of the painting and the drawings unfold before us as Lopez Garcia progresses with his own creations. So we were looking slowly at the art itself as he was creating it, and life felt more contemplative as I watched this. The slow looking at the film, the art of the film, the artist process, and the artist's work. Very slow.
Very well said. How about Ron?
Yeah, I was very moved and impressed with this film. It was a marvelous and unforgettable experience, and delightful to be able to download it for future use. I'm not going to read everything that I said here, but I did want to come back to Len's comment, because what he said specifically was, you find yourself among your pieces.
Yes.
Which I thought was a wonderful comment. I thought that the film was particularly exquisite in this capacity of the filmmaker to walk a tightrope between the quotidian and the sublime. As you see people in their everyday lives, the workers, the Polish fellows trying to learn Spanish, and then you see this consummate artist with this strong identification with Michelangelo. And what was interesting to me was to see that Last Judgment, where the filmmaker picks out one figure in that picture who's holding the same instrument for observation that Lopez Garcia uses in creating the quince picture. Wonderful.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
The classic and the modern. The film the film demonstrated a remarkable capacity to capture the fascination and veneration of the ephemera of our lives and the primal wish somehow to spoon up from the flow of the world a part of that world to make our own and to recreate that object in an act which is almost godlike. And what I thought about were the cave paintings at Altamira and the cave paintings at Lascaux, and how people 30,000 years ago demonstrated the same impulse to capture and recreate and preserve images of their everyday lives.
Terrific, terrific.
There's a kind of funereal and nostalgic theme. There's one scene where they're all dressed in black, and there's a kind of a odd comment about for an event, this is how you dress for this event. And Marie's, of course, painting him laid out like at a wake. But at the end of the film, he shares a dream of his childhood, and the idea of color and light, about his being in Tobeso, says, the quints are rotting. I see their flesh rotting under a light I cannot describe, clear yet dark, that changes all into metal and dust. It isn't the night light, neither is that of twilight or of dawn. And I thought of Shakespeare and how Prospero declares the dream light that rounds our little lives.
Well said, very well said. Jeremy, do you have something to add? Or we could skip that. Yeah. Let me see, Rita.
Yeah. The video of Antonio Garcia Lopez at the setup of his exhibition provides wonderful insight into the artist, not just revealing the precision and obsessiveness with which he creates and views his own work, but also the simplicity, humility, and appreciation with which he approaches all art. He says, I believe each one of us has a world. His creativity is sparked by his familiar realm: flowers, interiors, exteriors, the moon, children, naked people. In his house, one room leads to another. He studies his world closely and slowly. There he finds infinite variety and infinite inspiration. Lopez's sculpture of Fatima, probably Our Lady of Fatima, is especially compelling. So that was at the end of that video, if you remember. Such purity, delicacy, restraint, and power. The realistic torso is stripped to its essence. The tilt of the head upwards, the face poised to receive the light, the meditative silence that radiates outward. It is a sculpture imbued with an interior spirituality. And it is a joy to watch Lopez as he most carefully and lovingly positions Fatima to the perfect location on her pedestal so that the museum's lighting bathes her reverently. He backs away satisfied, thrilled with Fatima's beauty, thrilled to share it with the world.
That's a terrific scene, and
Is it?
really terrific. And he's like a little boy there.
Yeah.
He's really into it. He's really excited.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice point to end on. I'd like some of you.
Actually, Simon, I couldn't work my mute, and I do have something. If
Okay, good.
Hang on a sec, because it spoke to what Ron was saying, which I think what everyone has said is really interesting. But here's what I had. Early on, when Lopez stuck the two nails into the ground to ensure that he stood vertically in exactly the same place every time. Can you hear me, Simon?
Yes, I can.
It struck me that he was turning himself into a sundial. He wasn't painting the quince tree, but his own distinct and personal experience of the quince tree. And in particular, he was working with a force that resists definition, but that we are all deeply conscious of, the way in which we're all swept along irresistibly in an unseen current of time. So much of the movie was time-bound, the constant reminiscence in the conversation between Lopez and Enrique Gran, the day-by-day structure, the repeated images of the moving sky, even the very pointed inclusion of long-forgotten moments playing out on the radio. As he's painting the quince tree, Lopez is fighting the transformation of time marking the quinces, lifting the leaves, even changing his medium in order to trace the object and present it as stable despite the constant transforming flow.
Terrific, terrific.
Last paragraph is, my impression was that he was trying to stop time or step outside it in order to freeze both the object and his unique perception of it. I want to paint my own time, Lopez says in the Michael Klein interview. My thought would be that, and not narrative, is what's outside the frame. The attempt to wrest an experience of the tangible world from the disappearing moment in which we're all trapped.
Wow, that's super, super. Could you read that again? Read that again.
So my thought would be that, and not narrative, is what's outside the frame. The attempt to wrest an experience of the tangible world from the disappearing moment in which we're all trapped. Perhaps that would be the reason that paintings have the power to move us. The urge to capture our own imagination of the world combined with our sense experience of it can't be separated from the knowledge that the artist, the viewer, and the quince will all at some point hit the ground and rot.
Could you read the last two paragraphs again?
Sure. So much of the movie was time-bound. The constant reminiscence in the conversation between Lopez and Enrique Gran, the day-by-day structure, the repeated images of the moving sky, even the very pointed inclusion of long-forgotten moments playing out on the radio. As he's painting the quince tree, Lopez is fighting the transformation of time, marking the quinces, lifting the leaves, even changing his medium in order to trace the object and present it as stable despite the constant transforming flow. My impression was that he was trying to stop time or step outside it in order to freeze both the object and his unique perception of it. I want to paint my own time, Lopez says in the Michael Klein interview. My thought would be that, and not narrative, is what's outside the frame. The attempt to wrest an experience of the tangible world from the disappearing moment in which we're all trapped. Perhaps that would be the reason that paintings have the power to move us. The urge to capture our own imagination of the world, combined with our sense experience of it, can't be separated from the knowledge that the artist, the viewer, and the quince will all at some point hit the ground and rot.
Bravo.
Super.
Right.
Super.
Wow.
A fabulous ending to a, I think, fabulous class. But so next week, I'd like at the end of the class for the ones who haven't gone to contribute. And I want to present a theme that is an imaginary exhibit of Lopez paintings of Madrid, or the Lopez landscape. And yeah, I've enjoyed this very, very much. And so I'll see you next week. Okay,
Good night.
And
Bye.
great. Absolutely great.
No, Dad used to